Hello and welcome to episode 37 of the Herald's Horn. On this one, Dan and I are chopping it up about a couple different topics. Massive Magic the Gathering card erratas, a cool new Magic the Gathering wiki, the results of Pro Tour Chicago, and some of our favorite decks from that event. Well, favorite deck from that event. It's a fun little spicy one. Of course, we also have the product watch where we're going to talk about the newly announced Universes Beyond set. We're going to talk about our love for the plane of Tarkir and plenty more as well. No interview on this one because the interview for this week will be coming Tuesday. That's right. Like I shared in this recently shared bonus episode, I am going to be splitting up the show a little bit, at least for a couple weeks. Just experiment it with it, see how people feel about it, all that kind of stuff. Would love to know what you think. Would love to know your feedback, all that kind of stuff. Without any further ado, let's get into the episode. But first, I wanted to remind you about the Steve Ellis playmat collection and token pack. Steve Ellis is an incredible Magic the Gathering artist, and he is putting forth some of his best work for this backer kit campaign. We've got Lurrus of the Dream Den, we've got Gyruda of the Depths, we've got good old Gigantha of the Wellspring, and we also have Power Balance. There is some stretch goal mats to still be hit. I am personally hoping for Elvish Promenade. Of course, there is also the token pack, which in my humble opinion is that's the thing I'm most excited for. We've got some really awesome new original art by Steve. There's constructs, zombies, birds, all that kind of stuff. You can get the normal token pack for $15, or this is really cool silver foil treatment that goes really well with the black and white art that is going to be available for a little bit more. Go ahead and jump into the backer kit and check it out. I would appreciate it. Thank you very much. Let's get into the show. Hello, it's time for the Herald's Horn, part of the One Shot Network. My name is Cal Jones, and today, as almost always, I'm joined by Dan. Say hello, Dan.
Hello, Emma.
Dan, today you are looking real cozy. A delightful little red quarter zip up sweater you have on.
The one thing our podcast audience loves is when Cal describes my outfit.
It's this new bit I'm trying. I'm trying to create a visual feast for the listener at home and stating the obvious to the people who are watching.
Cal, of course, coming to us with a lovely all black attire.
That's every episode of the show.
All right, run the theme.
Song. And welcome back. As always, we are going to jump directly into the news. But first, actually, I want to thank everyone at home who supports us over on Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting the show. And as always, we are going to shout out our first share patrons. It's Baldrald. Thank you very much, Baldrald, better known as Jerry, I think. If you support us over on Patreon, you can get special content, including I just dropped a new episode of Cal's Corner, which is just me yapping for 20 minutes over on there on Tuesday, talking about my MagicCon Chicago experience, that kind of stuff. We have extras from the show, which is like extra questions for guests, Dan and Lexi and Emma and I being silly, the kind of the stuff that doesn't really fit into the show, but isn't like objectionable. So, we like to put that up on Patreon. If that kind of stuff interests you, you can check that out. And I will send you 2 stickers in the mail. How about that?
Thanks, patrons.
All right. The first bit of news we have today is kind of almost just like a little bit of community housekeeping, I think. The MTG Wiki has moved to a new website, mtg.wiki. The old wiki still exists, but the people at Scryfall have kind of taken all of that information and ported it over to a new place that they are hosting, because the original quote unquote like MTG Wiki in its current and old state is on the fandom platform, which is terrible, really hard for editors to work in, really hard for people to work in, chock full of ads. If you've ever looked at a random wiki and you're like, why is this so terrible? Why are there 200 ads everywhere? It's because it's a fandom wiki rather than like a quote unquote proper, fan run wiki or what have you. Fandom wikis are still run by fans, usually all that kind of stuff. It's just like somehow this one company, I think it used to be called Curse, swept up a whole ton of this community content years ago, and the platform just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So the Magic the Gathering community, with the help of Scryfall and its the existing really consistent wiki editors and staff that were working on it, have all conspired together to move all of that information onto a new platform hosted by Scryfall, which will hopefully suit the community much better. So if you are trying to look up MTG Wiki stuff, go to the simple URL, mtg.wiki. I already like it a lot more. It's a lot easier for me to find stuff on.
Just one quick look at this. Like, I haven't even heard of this until right now, and I type in mtg.wiki. This looks a million times better than the fandom version did. So yeah, nice upgrade. Yeah,
it kind of just looks like a traditional, it does very much just look much more like a traditional wiki, very, very much in the, vein and design and function of, like, the wiki, Wikipedia. It kind of just looks like Wikipedia, but about Magic the Gathering, where if you go to the fandom MTG wiki, it looks like a terrible content slop website that is trying to serve you 200 ads. So big upgrade in my book. Thank you for the folks. As always, thank you for the folks over at Scryfall for
forever. They rule
everything that they do. Moving on, speaking of Scryfall, Dan sent a link over my way from the Scryfall blog earlier today with some really fascinating information. They just did a kind of, they had to do pretty much they had to reflect a massive errata that Gatherer introduced with the release of Aether Drift. Huge errata. It affects basically a third of the cards in the game. It sounds like a really, really big deal, and it kind of is because it affects so many cards, but all of the changes are actually quite small, and basically none of them are actually quote unquote functional. The vast majority of it is they are changing a lot of cards' Gatherer text, Gatherer Oracle text being the official text of a Magic card according to Wizards of the Coast, which can be slightly too very different than the printed functionality of a card. In Foundations, they changed the way that they formatted cards. Cards can now be referential to themselves by saying this card, this artifact, this land, rather than in the past, those cards have like always repeated their name. They would say, whenever Dockside Extortionist enters the battlefield, do X. Whenever Malcolm Alluring Scoundrel deals combat damage to a player, do X. Now, to save space and that kind of stuff, all of those cards will now, except for a very small selection, now just say, when this creature enters the battlefield, create a number of treasure tokens equal to artifacts and enchantments. It kind of makes sense. There's a couple other small changes that they did too in a similar vein. A lot of legendary creatures, they have used a lot more of what Scryfall calls short names, where legendary creatures, if they have to refer to themselves, it usually had like the full name of the card. Now they've just shortened it down to use the same examples earlier. Malcolm Alluring Scoundrel. It says, the original printing says like, when Malcolm Alluring Scoundrel deals combat damage to a player, do this stuff. Now it says, when Malcolm deals combat damage to a player, do this stuff. And they added affinity for artifacts, the mechanic technically, to a few cards that had the same functionality and that kind of cleanup stuff. But Dan, I'm sure you have some hot takes about these massive erratas from Aether Drift. How is this bad for the game?
Well, of course, it is going to make us all stupid and no one will be able to read anymore. No, it makes sense. It is, I don't know, maybe a little bit less immersive if I was going to actually try to reach a straws for a take here. But yeah,
I'm not actually looking for negativity.
No, this just makes a lot of sense. And especially with, like we've said it 1,000 times before, cards just have more and more text on them. You cannot fit Malcolm Alluring Scoundrel onto a card that has 4 paragraphs of text. So just makes a lot of sense. I like you said, this affects basically nothing, and I would imagine if we saw reprints of a lot of these cards, you wouldn't note a real difference in the amount of text on the text box. But a fine upgrade if ever there was one. Nice little bit of simplification.
I think if if there's anything that I think I can be like kind of a little bit of a boomer about some of this sometimes because
Good, we need it for the podcast. Come on.
well, I mean, functional erratas are usually what kind of worry me. Like the one errata that has kind of always been very slightly frustrating to me over time is like when they did the really big rollout of changing a lot of old cards to read like any target or whatever when they used to say player or creature, because the functional rules text of that card was that those cards could also damage planeswalkers, because to damage planeswalkers, you targeted a player and then redirected the damage to a planeswalker. That rule was one of those rules that like failed the test of if you told someone new playing the game, they thought you were lying to them so that you could get them. Right?
Yeah.
You're like, all right. And now that I pointed this at you, okay. And they're like, sure. And they're like, okay, now I get to redirect the damage to your planeswalker and it dies. That rules fix was good. I did not like them then going back and making it so that every single old card technically could target planeswalkers now as well, even though that was like always the functionality. I don't know. That's a tough row to hoe, because now there's a whole bunch of cards out there that say, target player or creature. And you can say, oh, yep, this could target a planeswalker. And someone you're playing against who's new at the game goes, you're lying to me.
Yeah, those corner cases are a little bit iffy. I don't know. I think that this is probably a better one overall. I don't think,
and none of that falls out of this. I just had a small rant to go on about errata in general.
I honestly forgot about that. That happened such a short time after you and I both started playing, because I do recall very, very vividly pointing lightning bolts at people's faces and then saying redirect to your planeswalker.
Oh yeah, redirect to your planeswalker. And now all the new printings of Lightning Bolt do say any target. So, which is what it's supposed to be. It was interesting. I think like the closest thing we maybe came to like an actual functional errata at all, beyond like Guidelight Pathmaker, a card from Aether Drift, they made the shuffling on it
conditional.
Optional. Yeah. It reads, when this vehicle enters, you may search your library for an artifact card and reveal it. Put it onto the battlefield if its mana value is 2 or less. Otherwise, put it in your hand, then shuffle. They only make you shuffle your library if you search for the card now, because it's a may to search. So if you don't search, you don't have to randomly shuffle your library. But all the other stuff is pretty much just like cool cleanup stuff. And it is crazy that Scryfall has done the lift to update all of the stuff on there. I don't know what kind of, if they have some kind of API from Gather or whatnot, because that is, or can somehow download all that information and upload it quickly, because that is a lot of creatures and all that had changed. A third of the cards of Magic the Gathering technically had very small changes done to their rules text.
Yeah, like lift. According to this blog, it is approximately 12,000 creatures, artifacts, and enchantments that have received just the enters the battlefield errata, or this blank characteristic errata. Yeah, it's a mind-boggling amount of cards. I wonder if it's a thing that they've been working on for a long time, or yeah.
I would imagine so. I mean, I would have to think so. And then they did technically add the affinity keyword to 16 different cards. I don't know if there's like anything that cares about something having affinity, because it got better mildly, but anyways. So that's that. The huge errata, the most technically, probably the second most wide-ranging errata in Magic the Gathering history, after every single direct damage spell getting changed to any target rather than reading player or creature. That worked that way. But, or any spell that could target players also got changed by and large to player or planeswalker at the same time.
Yeah, I wonder numerically, like, which one has more card changes than this. I would be interested to see, because there are just so many more cards now.
I would guess this one technically is larger, because that one basically only affected like a specific subsection of like direct damage to creature and player spells. Or
well, I mean, you're right in that there's all sorts of like goblin bombardment sort of effects that like also do a similar thing. But that was like 10 or more years ago now. So just like in the sheer amount of Magic cards there are, this has probably got to be the biggest.
Definitely. And somehow probably the least impactful of Errata of history either.
Like I was just thinking that as well.
Changing a lot of lizards to dinosaurs in Ixalan ranks higher on the list. And they changed
that one trips me up way more. Oh, that's right. They're not Viashinu anymore.
Yeah. It's just like, all right, I'm going to run out this death main lizard. And you're like, cool, it's a lizard. They're like, no, it's a dinosaur. It has +5/+5. Get ya. Sorry, Death Mist Raptor. There we go. That card from Dragonstorm Tarkir. Don't worry, we'll be talking about that plane later. But before we get there, let's move on to kind of the big news of the weekend. We spent a lot of time on last episode talking about Pro Tour Chicago. Dan, you weren't here. Sorry. But Pro Tour Chicago did take place this weekend. It was Standard and Aether Drift draft. Matt Nass finally wins one. Matt Nass has been knocking on the door of being a Pro Tour winner. He's been one of the greats of Magic for a very long time now. Math Nass, if you will. We got to watch him take a quite long final turn in a grueling fifth game of I believe, over a 2-hour long match domain mirror. He spent a lot of time on the final turn adding up his combat damage, making sure that he could swing for lethal on his opponent, sending in 54 damage, which is a lot. That's awesome. But Matt, in general, had a very dominant run this weekend, going 7-0 in Swiss, playing Standard, and then a combined 5-1 record between his two 3-round drafts. Interestingly enough, on the meta side of things, Esper Pixie did not perform. We were talking a little bit last week that was one of the anticipated, like, really good decks going into the weekend. You just get to cast your Nurturing Pixie and bounce all your enchantments and do really messed up stuff with This Town Ain't Big Enough. And it turned out that that did not work out. Domain ended up kind of just smushing people. Domain was really good. Domain is such a strange deck. It's kind of like
extremely cool.
Yeah, we've talked about it on the pod before, when we were like, oh, here's a cute little deck that uses Zur Eternal Schemer to turn overlords into creatures way ahead of schedule. But it turns out that is a Pro Tour winning deck. That
legit
is
strategy.
That is a 3 decks in the top 8. And several, quite a few in the top, like, winningest players list by points in Standard, type of deck. Go figure. These weirdo domain lists are still here. They are just playing Overlords and Zur rather than all the stuff they used to. And this is just yet another Pro Tour in Standard that comes down to Up the Beanstalk being one of the most messed up Magic cards that has ever been printed.
4 of in all of these domain decks, and if you just look at these deck lists, like, it's made to just trample all over the rest of the meta, which is like basically like the Gruul Stompy and those bits of like Esper aggro. Like, there's 3 board wipes in the main deck. There's 1 Sunfall, 2 Day of Judgments. You get almost everything else in your deck triggers your Up the Beanstalks, including other copies. You get your multiple copies of Up the Beanstalk down. You cast your impending cost for your things to start drawing multiple cards. This is just like impossible to keep up with. This is absolutely incredible.
Yep, and I do love. I would love to hear Matt Nass's thoughts about, like, and I'm sure someone who's a little more versed in Standard can tell me why this is so good. Again, it's probably just maybe because of anti-standard stuff, but basically the only Aether Drift card nearly in this entire deck list for Matt Nass is 4 Ride's End, which is 4 in a white instant. It costs 3 less to cast if it targets a tapped permanent, so 2 total. Exile target creature or vehicle. So yeah, someone's attacking at you, or just exile that for 2 mana. No problem. Get it out of here.
And trigger your Up the Beanstalk.
Yeah, and trigger Up the Beanstalk. Oh yeah. My gosh. You did it. You solved it. That's why they're playing it. Never mind. Put me in the basement.
That is exactly the reason why. It is a very funny thing that is literally the only Ether Draft card that made it into. I think Saffron Olive posted a breakdown of like the cards from different sets that were showing up in the top 8, and Ether Drift, I think, was by numbers the lowest. Yeah,
either the lowest or the second lowest. I think technically Aftermath was the lowest, but that's how that set barely counts.
Yeah, so right at the bottom rung, if not the actual bottom rung of the ladder. But yeah, the four of Ride's Ends to trigger your Up the Beanstalk's very, very funny. What are you going to do if you don't have access to Murderous Cut?
Versus a lot of different decks. You know, people will be attacking you to try to win games, and they'll probably be attacking you with a creature you would like to remove, and that means you can pay 2 mana for it. Why not?
It's extremely good against like opposing overlords if you're in the mirror match.
Yeah, why not? Go crazy. Get him out of here. Anyways, we don't really have time to get into a deeper breakdown of the meta past kind of this top level stuff. I did really want to really quickly shout out Christopher Larson, though. He was one of the top performing standard players who I assume due to his draft record did not make it into the top 8. They were playing Golgari Obliterator, which was like kind of it's completely different than it's a lot closer to some of those Golgari mid-range decks that used to exist with Mossword Dread Knight and Sentinel of the Nameless City and Preacher of the Schism and a bunch of removal and but also 4 Phyrexian Obliterator. If you, listener, do not remember what that card does, it's a bit of a throwback. 4 black, 5/5 with trample. Whenever a source deals damage to Phyrexian Obliterator, that source's controller sacrifices that many permanents. That could it gets ugly real quickly. I would like to target that with my Ride's End though, so you're gonna just have to pick that up. I think just gonna have to put that in the exile zone. I bet that's what Matt Nass said. You can put that over there.
Yeah, that is going to go to its Ride's End, unfortunately.
I love Phyrexian Obliterator. I'm happy that like someone played it to a very good.
I forgot that was in standard
this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a rad card. I fondly remember this being like, how do you mess with this card? Like as beginning players, it was one of those cards that was so mysterious how do you even combat this? Yep. The game is over if you can get to 4 mana.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to swing at you. What are you going to do? Take 5 damage? What are you going to do? Block it, and I'm going to trample over, and you have to sacrifice 3 permanents? Idiot.
Unthinkable. Yeah. They hadn't invented Ride's End yet, so.
There was no counterplay to Phyrexian Obliterator before they printed Ride's End.
Standard staple, Ride's End.
Dan, did you get any chance to watch the Pro Tour at all this weekend?
No, I was hoping to get to watch at least the last match before we recorded this afternoon, but I am deep in the editing tank this afternoon, so I did not get to watch any. How were the games, though? You said they were quite exciting.
I did get to watch a bit of the finals. They were exciting in a really weird way. They were like grueling because it's you looked at Matt Nass's deck. It was basically a mirror match. They were playing. There was like some different card decisions here and there.
Monetarily, there's like a $200 difference between them, but like cards wise, they're like almost exactly the same. And it's just that the numbers between them are different.
Yeah, just like a little differences in the mana base, and one of them has a different spread of enchantments versus instants and sorceries and that kind of stuff. Just like we're playing 3 Get Lost and 1 Elspeth Smite in the main board versus just 2 Get Lost and 4 Ride's End, so just like a little bit of differences here and there. But yeah, they played a 5-game match. I got to watch basically game 1 and game 5 here and there, but I was slinging playmats all weekend long with my buddy Gold Sabertooth, so I was a bit more disconnected from the Pro Tour than I would have liked to be. But that's Pro Tour Chicago. I'm planning on going back and watching some of the coverage because it's always a great time. I spent the whole of last episode yelling at people to watch the Pro Tour this weekend. I hope they listened, and I'm going to take my own advice now that I'm getting back in settled at home after MagicCon Chicago. After all of that, I think that's all the news we have for this week. So I think it's time for us to go back to a segment that we haven't done in some time. It's time for a letter to the editor.
Letter to the editor.
Hello, welcome to the Letter to the Editor. It's the part of the show where you can ask us or state at us or pick our brain at us about anything. Open to patrons, obviously, but also you can always send in one by emailing us editorial@heraldshorn.com. We would love to hear from you because I like doing this segment. For the first time ever, Dan, we have a co-host specific question. We had
very fun. Okay.
Yes, we had a lovely patron write in with a question specifically for Dan. Let me read this letter to the editor here real quick. I'm opening it up. I printed it out and put it in an envelope. I did not do that. I did not do that.
For the listening audience, so Cal did mime opening up the envelope with his hand.
Dearest Dan.
It does not start like that.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
If you were to ban any one card because of how much it sucks to edit, what would it be? Love, Murph, another fellow gameplay editor who I'm sure has many strong opinions on the question they have asked. But video editor to video editor, he seems to want to know.
Listener, I guess if you're unaware of my work, I edit my own CEDH YouTube channel as well as being the primary editor for the Scry Babies. So lots and lots of different kinds of EDH under my belt. I would say, honestly, for a long time, it definitely would have been Mana Crypt just for the fact that, like, it's the card that people mulligan to. It's the card that you're probably most likely to see, like, multiple copies of on the table when it was legal. But now I think it's probably easily a Ristic Study.
Sure. Yeah,
it's kind of tough.
With Mana Crypt, like, it goes on the battlefield, and then every upkeep you got to put it on screen, and you got to make sure that have the edited in this weird upkeep trigger when you could just skip through all of that. And
at a certain point, I took the advice of fellow editor EK of just, like, trusting that the audience understands what's happening, because you get it. You get why people are taking their 3 damage. At this point, maybe just because it's fresh, I hate Polywog Prodigy. It makes me so pissed off. Honestly, not because it's, like, any worse than Ristic Study or Esper Sentinel, but just because it's the third one now that's, like, the most popular of, like, it didn't used to be this way. We just used to have our Mystic Remora triggers and the Ristic Study triggers.
People so hard for so long trying to find, like, a 2-drop CEDH playable card advantage engine in blue, because they print so many of them, like Ledger Shredder and Fairy Mastermind, and there was another one that people were trying for a while that I can't remember. But now there's one that definitely seems a little more real. Listener, if you're not familiar with Polywog Prodigy, let me read it for you here really quick. It's 1 in a blue. Evolve. So whenever a creature you control enters, if that creature has greater power or toughness than this creature, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. It is a 1/3, so it's pretty easy to trigger on the power side.
Yeah, there are just so many commanders that are 2/2, so it's really easy to make it a 2/4, and then you're drawing off of basically everything.
Yep, it says its final line of rules text is whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell with mana value less than Polywog Prodigy's power, draw a card. So yeah, you get it up to 2, or even if you can get it up to 3 power, holy moly. But even at 2 power, it's triggering off most mana rocks, it's triggering off most tutors, it's triggering off everything.
Yeah. So yeah, like, if I'm saying for the health of the game, I'm going to say that Ristic Study is the one that we're going to say get out of here too. But for the one that makes me personally the most angry
when you're editing, it's still not Ristic Study. It's not just like, because like Ristic Study, I feel like would gotta be the most annoying. You gotta put those triggers up there. You got a lot to keep track of.
So here's the thing: is that, like, a real savvy player, if they're playing for the camera, like in a video editing setting, they're going to say, I cast X card. I'm going to pay for Ristic Study. I'm not going to pay for Ristic Study. It's super easy. And in that kind of case, you don't need to put it up there. For Polywog Prodigy, and I mean, I wish this was true, but people also do this with Ristic Study. People just cast their spell and then they'll wait, and then they'll really hope that the other person doesn't catch it. And, like,
and then the other person says, trigger, are you going to pay? Yeah. And then the other person has to be like, huh.
So yes, I have to edit together like 4 different sound bites of people going, huh, what, boo.
So I would guess, I don't 100% know, but I would guess that Murph has the same answer as you, especially since Murph edits game nights where they have to play up that interaction about every time.
But I wonder, does Polywog Prodigy show up as much in casual settings? I guess I don't really know.
No, I would. Sorry, I meant Ristic Study, not Polywog Prodigy.
Oh well, yeah, Ristic Study,
Ristic Study, but
fired enough to make
maybe not Polywog,
upset.
but I feel like Polywog would still like. You could put Polywog Prodigy into a casual deck, and you could probably get it up to like 4 power.
Oh yeah, easily, yeah.
And then you would be drawing off every non-creature spell that people cast.
It's a really powerful card if people aren't playing it. Yeah, I guess Smothering Tithe is probably another one that's like up there in the upper echelon of like being the most annoying. But yeah, it's got to be between one of those.
Sure. It's just I'm gonna. Do you want to pay 2? No. Okay, I'll make.
Yeah, that's another one where like a keen player draws their card and says, "I am or I am not paying for that," and then other people just wait, and then I add it together.
Yep. Hey, so you heard that out there, gameplay makers. Save your editor some trouble. Just talk through your game actions. I'm not paying for Ristic Study. I'm not going to pay for Smothering Tithe. I am paying for Smothering Tithe. And then your editor will kiss you on the mouth.
And you know what? Your viewers will too, because they'll understand what's going on. And they won't be like, why did all those players moan and then sigh?
And we all know that we need less moaning in Magic the Gathering.
Dear Lord, yes.
Content. So that has been this edition of Letter to the Editor. If you would like to pick our brain, ask us for advice, give us advice, any of that kind of stuff, hit us up on the Patreon thread, which now exists for this purpose, or email me, again, editorial@heraldshorn.com. With that out of the way, it is time for us to move on to our final recurring segment. It's the one that we obviously get to do the most. It is time for the Product Watch.
Woo! I don't know why I did that.
Welcome to the Product Watch, the part of the show where we talk about all of the products that have been announced or have come out or all that kind of stuff in Magic the Gathering since our last episode. Isn't this so exciting? As always, we have today. Yeah, it's a pretty interesting one. It's like this one feels like kind of like a wide and shallow product watch, but that's kind of a nice product watch to have. We did have MagicCon Chicago this last weekend, and as always, these events bring more news about upcoming sets. The big one was they gave us a solid first look at the upcoming standard set, Tarkir Dragonstorm. I think it was technically our first look. What'd you say?
I said copy and paste woo.
Yep. Tarkir is Wilden is kind of my interpretation of this. It seems like it's recovering from the Phyrexian War. It seems to be recovering from kind of the story that we saw where everything was ruled by the Khans. There was like 5 big groups of people that were ruled by Khans, and then some weird timey-wimey shenanigans happened, and then all of the clans were ruled by dragons instead. To me, it seems like the humans and the dragons have kind of at some level made like peace, and many of the clans have been retaken at least partially by the humans. So it's interesting. Set's coming out on April 11th. Normal standard set in a full 5 commander decks, 1 for each clan. That's kind of cool.
It's been a bit since we've gotten the full, like even the full round of 4 of them. So to see 5 for each color pairing is going to be fun.
Yep, I definitely agree. For those of you who are unfamiliar out there, I guess we can say this really quick. I just assume that everyone is familiar with Tarkir because it's such an iconic set, but it's pretty
well, now
old.
I think it's for us.
pretty old plane these days.
Yeah.
Tarkir is a 3-color world. All 5 clans are 5 of the possible 3-color combinations. You have Abzan, which is green, white, and black. You have Jeskai, which is red, white, and blue. You have Mardu, which is white, black, and red. You have
Abzan,
which is white, black, and
green.
green. There we go. And then rounding it out, you have, I already said Sultai. What's the final? Did I say Sultai? No, I didn't. Sultai, which is green, black, and blue. So each of these different clans kind of have their own vibe. They have their own stuff going on, very thematic to their colors. So it'd be really cool to see a full 5 commander decks for each one. Baseless speculation that came out of our Discord server today from the one and only supporter Dusty Cupboards. The words steam vents were in the Dragonstorm Planewalkers guide under the teamer location section, so shocklands are basically confirmed in the product. So go ahead and print that on the front page of the podcast.
See, this is what we need. We need more patrons and fans making wild and baseless guesses at what sets are going to be like. We need something more punchy than the two of us just agreeing all the time.
In the Planeswalker guide, the phrase steam vents, shocklands confirmed.
These dragons come from a tropical island?
Whoa, woo, 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 woo. Reserve list broken. Dual land reprint imminent.
Hey, I'll see you later. I just need to go get something from Mishra's workshop.
Wow, I can't believe that Sarkin is going to Mishra's workshop. That's crazy. Wow, look over there. Let's go to the recently started Bazaar of Baghdad.
Recently started. It's new on the block. It's right next to the pink bear.
I love the culture of Tarkir, now with the Bazaar of Baghdad. Something cool they're doing for the set. It's been a minute since they've done something like this. It's something they kind of used to do more. You can support your clan at pre-release.
I used to love this. Yeah.
Yeah. When you sign up for pre-release, you will choose a clan. And if there are pre-release kits available left for that clan, you will get a normal pre-release kit, almost normal pre-release kit, but one of the packs will kind of be like a seeded pack that has cards specific to the clan that you chose that hopefully will help you kind of push your pre-release sealed pool in that direction, and you can play the clan you want to play if you would like to.
Okay, wait a minute. This is actually really fun because I still have, I think this is either the Sultai or the Mardu.
That's
Sultai. The Sultai pin that I got at the Tarkir pre-release 10 years ago.
Sick. Dan, I was about to ask, what's your history with Tarkir like? I think a lot of people who have been playing a little longer have a little bit of a have some nice memories with the plane.
Yeah, it's certainly a fun one. I mean, you, Emma, and I all started right around this time, for anyone on the podcast who has not heard our individual Magic histories. So I suspect that us talking about Tarkir is going to be like the emotional highlight of this entire podcast. But yeah, I love Tarkir. I have always thought it was a really fun plane. I got into Magic right before it came out, and the thing that really got me into Magic was, there are dragons and they're cool. So when the dragon set came out, I had Scion of the Dragon is the one that you pay 2 and search up a dragon. This was a very big boon to my Scion of the Dragon deck. So extremely fond memories of playing lots of pre-releases. I really wanted the Ugin Spirit Dragon promo that you could get for it was this rolling a 20-sided die. And
yeah, they had a really weird, they used to do really weird mini games at pre-releases and stuff.
Which is very funny because the whole the dexterity card thing has been banned for so long, but still, pre-releases for still into 2016, 2017, there were all of these little, it was a little, where you would roll a 20-sided die for D&D or something like that. But if you got it in specific circles, you would get a better promo card or something like that. I can't remember quite what the deal was, but, I love Tarkir. So I'm very excited about the return. The preview cards have been super cool. The little mini, Siege Rhino, can't get any better than that. I am way too excited.
The only card I referenced in these notes, listener, I wrote down Skirmish Rhino, LOL.
My exact reaction.
Skirmish Rhino. It costs a white, a black, and a green. It has trample. It says when this creature enters, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life, and it is a 3/4. Of course, listener, especially if you are a newer Magic the Gathering player, you may not know the tale of the iconic Khans of Tarkir card, Siege Rhino. One, a white, a black, and a green. Yes, unfathomably powerful. Now you look at it, compared to new cards, you look at it, you're like, huh? This is fine.
Like, just, you're about to read out the rate of it, and it's going to sound insane that this dominated standard.
Okay. It is a 3-color 4-drop. Okay, so you have to have white, black, and green mana readily available to cast it, and you want to cast it on turn 4. It is a trampling 4/5. When Siege Rhino, well, actually, the Oracle text has been updated to when this creature enters. But the original text is when Siege Rhino enters the battlefield. Great example of the previous errata, of the earlier errata we talked about. Each opponent loses 3 life, and you gain 3 life. So, I mean, like, look, you're playing a pretty low-powered standard environment. You can comically easily hit 3 colors, 4 mana, put a 4/5 trampler into play that causes a 6-point life swing. What is your opponent going to do about that? Especially when you cast a second one. Come on.
Well, especially because also, like, the more overarching bit of this is that in standard at this time, I think this is maybe one of the most expensive standards ever. This is when fetch lands and the Battle for Zendikar dual check lands that have dual types on them are all legal. So casting your Abzan Rhino, not actually all that hard. But if your opponent has, like, you know, also cracked 3 fetches, they're probably also at, like, you know, like 17 or 16 by the time your Siege Rhino comes down. Like, that's big money. What are they going to do when you cast the second one? There's not a lot left. You got to keep up and cast your own. And interestingly, I know that the original design of Siege Rhino was not its final design, and I think it is a little bit closer to the Skirmish Rhino. I think it originally, I know Emma would know this if she was here, but I think originally Siege Rhino was just Abzan mana for a 3/4 that also Lightning Helixed.
That sounds roughly correct.
I can't remember exactly what it was, but I love Skirmish Rhino. It's such a fantastic nod to that, and like a little bit of a nod to its original design as well.
I do also gotta shout out the rules, the flavor text on this card. It says, slowly, the clans have begun to recover and adapt long forgotten tactics. So kudos to whoever wrote that one. I have a feeling a lot of things about this set are going to make 16-year-old Cal's little heart very happy. So maybe 17-year-old, I don't remember.
I can't remember
how old I was when Khans of Tarkir came out and found and Dragons and Fate Reforged. Anyways, that's enough of that. Let's move on to the real excitement for all of those people out there. I am pretty excited for this. They finally announced the identity of the unknown, unannounced Universes Beyond set. That was going to be the last standard legal set of the year. Like we nearly baselessly speculated on this podcast months ago, it is Avatar, The Last Airbender. We're 1 for 100, baby. Let's go. No, a lot of people predicted it with a fairly solid evidence basis, with some like really funky sales that came up in Arena, and there was like some stuff that was data mined out of Arena that kind of pointed to it. Here it is, Avatar: The Last Airbender. They haven't really, one of the creators of the show, they had a nice little video from him pretty much saying, hey, we're really excited and working with Wizards to bring this to the game. And they showed off some art of all of your Avatar: The Last Airbender faves. And I got chills watching the video because Avatar: The Last Airbender has been really important to me in periods of my life. So another IP that I'm excited for. So you know what that means. I am back to being a Universes Beyond fan.
Welcome back, brother. We missed you.
It's so good to be back. Final Fantasy had me so down, but Avatar: The Last Airbender has me so back.
Cactus isn't doing it for you?
Yeah, and he thought, dude, no.
No, the cactus bums me out.
No, I think a 10,000 power creature does kind of rock, and the reference to the creature kind of well done. I don't care. A 7-drop with 10,000 power is not that different from a 7-drop with 15 power or whatever, right? Like it is over the top. It's fun though. I think it's over the top in a fun way.
I'm going to be the old dinosaur now and say that 10,000 power is immersion breaking for me. It's just too much. Like
fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. When like the next closest like relatively natural power we've had on a creature is like 25 or something. Oh, 100-handed one. Yeah.
But even still, yeah, you're right. That's not printed on the card.
Did his power get big? He could just block 100 creatures.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, no. I'm just talking about in terms of like the number printed.
Yeah, a really big number. Yeah, an additional 99, I think, is probably the largest creature number that's been on a card otherwise. And a lot of people got ticked off with that nearly a decade ago, too. So now we're up to 10,000. Do you have many thoughts about, have you ever been an Avatar The Last Airbender kid, Dan?
No. The anime kids at my high school were kind of weird. We had a lot of Naruto runners, and I did not hang out with those people, so I unfortunately missed out on like the entire anime train in high school. I was a big fan of like Dragon Ball Z and the original Dragon Ball, but that's about it. Avatar, I have never seen before. I like know very little about, like only what I have like learned through osmosis through memes. But from what I understand, I have certainly missed out, because anyone who is like a fan of it is like an emotionally large fan of it. Like it clearly like touches people in a way that like few pieces of art do. So it seems like it's going to be very exciting for the people who love it.
Dan, it's one of those things that I basically will highly recommend anyone who has missed out on it just like find the time to go back and watch it, because even it is like ostensibly quote unquote an animated show for children or whatever that was made by Nickelodeon, but extremely well done, extremely well told story about coming of age and finding yourself and genocide and many more very heavy and important themes that it navigates very well. I would highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it. And I hope the set rocks, because if the set doesn't rock, then it will ruin the show forever for me, and I will have to go back to being a Universes Beyond hater. Quick recap of the remaining sets we have for this year. All of these sets are going to be standard legal. Tarkir Dragonstorm, Final Fantasy, Edge of Eternities, which if you have forgotten is a in Magic Universe, like, but on the edges of space type of space opera. They showed off some art from it this weekend. I'm sure we'll talk about it way more in the future, but it looks actually kind of cool. The art that they were showing off, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, that does kind of look like what I would expect space, but in Magic the Gathering to look like, I guess. So we'll see. I'm holding cautious optimism for a set that I'm kind of anticipating to not like that much, but we'll see how Edge of Eternities goes. And then we have the back-to-back of Spider-Man and Avatar The Last Airbender. So very weird Universes Beyond filled year with it kind of just seems like a break for a seemingly very back to traditional Magic type of set in Tarkir Dragonstorm. We don't even so far, at least, we don't even have random people from other worlds showing up with a Khan's hat on, you know?
I guess it remains to be seen. The full set has not been spoiled yet, but yeah, like we said previously, this is going to be the year of Magic Universes Beyond IPs, and we're beginning to look down the barrel of it now.
And I think that's all we have for this episode. That's the Product Watch. Dan, as always, before we go, is there anything else you want to leave our listeners with?
No plugs. Enjoy the podcast. Thank you for listening. Rate us 5 stars on all the platforms. And yeah, that's it.
And that is where we are going to end this episode, listeners. That's right. There is no interview after this because I'm trying something a little bit different. For the next couple of weeks, at least, I'm going to be releasing the news on Thursday and the interview on Tuesday. It'll be in the same podcast feed. It'll be on the same YouTube channel. Just 2 separate little pieces of content putting out separate from each other. Again, if you would like to hear more about my thought process behind why I'm doing that, I would recommend Cal's Corner, episode 3, just released over on the Patreon. Thank you so much for listening and joining us here today. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you have feedback, would like to sponsor us, or would like to submit something to the Letters to the Editor segment, email me at editorial@heraldshorn.com. The show is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Cal Jones. The rest of the team is, of course, our co-hosts, Emma Partlow, Dan, better known as Moderately Anonymous MTG, and Lexi, better known as Black Girl Mage. We're having so much fun making this show. I hope you're enjoying listening to it. We'll see you next week.